If you really want to know how to do astrology, you're going to need to know three things. All the different symbols. You'll need to know all the different symbology of astrology. And then you'll also need to know how to combine all those different symbols. And the third thing you'll need is a lot of practice, getting experience on how those combinations actually work in the real world. So let's get started with the first step, which is the symbols, understanding the symbols of astrology. And the first step of the first step is to understand the symbology of all the astrological planets. They're astrological planets, they're not astronomical planets. The astronomical planets are up there, they're rocks, they're gases floating around in space. That's not the astrological planets. The astrological planets are inside our subtle being, as well as reflected outside into those rocks that you see in space. So we're not talking about Pluto and these different asteroids and things. We're talking about the essential energy centers in a person's being and in the human experience. Let's get started with the sun. The sun is the center of everything. It's the center of the solar system. All the planets revolve around it. It's the center of your being. It's the thing which gives all the light and heat to everything, without which there would be no possibility of life anywhere. And so the astrological symbol for the sun is a circle with a dot in the middle, pointing out to its being central to everything. So the essential symbolic meaning of the sun is that it is your consciousness itself, is your actual awareness around which everything else in your life revolves, which is the source of all of your life. It's your soul, your ego, your identity. Your very central consciousness is the sun. The very center of your consciousness is the sun. Then we have the moon. The moon takes the light of the sun and reflects it into the darkness of the night. So really, in fact, if you look at the symbol for the moon, it's a half of a circle, or sort of like a crescent circle, meaning it's only part of the consciousness. It's only part of the roundness, the fullness of the sun. So when the conscious self directs its attention towards the world of illusions, or the darkness of the night, that's when the moon is born. The moon represents our desires, our subjective self, all of our desires to experience this material world, which then result in all of our opinions and all of our feelings. This is all the core meaning of the moon. The moon reflects the consciousness into this world, and thereby holds all of our desires and feelings and opinions. Next, we have Mercury. Mercury occurs after we have desires. After the consciousness has reflected into this world and then becomes desirous of experiencing it, then we get Mercury. Mercury is a sort of a bridge to get from one place to another, to get from your inner consciousness to the outer world, and to exchange things back and forth between the outer world and your inner self. Now, Mercury forms a bridge between the mind and the body, but Venus is what actually creates the body. Venus actually gives us senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the ability to hear, feel, taste, smell, touch. That's Venus's evolution in the human being. So Venus is the senses to which Mercury connects to from the mind. So all things pertaining to the senses pertain to Venus. All sorts of art, all sorts of beauty, and also all things which make the senses pleasant and good and enjoyable, such as love, peace, harmony. Things which make this world of the senses nice and good are all in the domain of Venus. So at this point in evolution, we have a being actually appearing on Earth. So Earth comes after Venus, and we have us. But when we get here, the first thing that we realize we need is a whole lot of energy. We need a whole lot of energy to actually make our dreams come true in this world. And so this next stage of evolution is the birth of Mars. Mars is the symbol of all human energy and ambition, power and strength to act. And this ambition is the sole cause of violence and wars and pain as well, and that's why Mars is also associated with these things. So as I mentioned, Mars causes a lot of problem. Ambition causes a lot of strife and fighting and violence and competition. So now we need somebody to come to our rescue. So we have Jupiter. Jupiter evolves next after Mars. Jupiter is the ideal guide for human beings. He forms concepts of morality and ethics and faith and trust in human beings so that they can cooperate in their ambitions and actually get somewhere as a society, as a larger group, and not be so selfish. This is Jupiter. So Jupiter should have everybody getting along and cooperating and being moral and being good guys. But we're still going to find that human beings are unfulfilled even when they're nice and religious and get along with each other well, because they're running up against some severe obstacles in this material world, namely death. And Saturn is that representative, that final stage of evolution where we have to deal with the nature of time itself, the nature of death itself. And this is actually the ultimate impetus for the consciousness, which is where we all began, for the sun to come back to its original condition and get out of illusion. Death and time and all the forces of Saturn are seeking to redeem the consciousness which emanated from the sun originally. And so you have a complete cycle of all these planets. You have everything starting with the sun, with a consciousness, and reflecting off the moon into illusion, and then developing a bridge to this illusion by Mercury, and then developing senses to experience this illusion by Venus, and then getting the energy that it needs to act here by Mars, and then being guided and helped to act here properly by Jupiter, but then finally running into the limitations of being here as a result of Saturn. And this whole movement is being pushed and pulled by Rahu, forcing us outward to the world, and then Ketu pulling us back inward towards our soul. You can talk about all these planets and how things change from the consciousness to the mind to the intelligence to the senses, but nothing could ever change. None of these planets could have ever evolved if it were not for Rahu, because Rahu is the very force of chaos itself, the very force of change and the unknown. Rahu is hidden in secret places and makes these planets transform towards the external world. Then on the other hand is Rahu's counterpart, his opposite self, his opposite mirror image, Ketu. Ketu is the force of chaos, and Rahu is the force of chaos, but Rahu is causing a revolution outward towards materialism, whereas Ketu is causing a revolution inward, draining things, pulling things in to where it's only psychic and spiritual. So Ketu is forming a spiritual revolution and Rahu is forming a material revolution, and so between these two forces the planets actually come into existence.